Donka presents the Riverside Brigade and some product material, which I think you'll find very interesting. Take it away.
Hi, everybody.
Hello?
Okay, hi, everybody. We're really glad to be here. When we booked this, we thought we would be bringing somewhere between 7 and 10 snare drummers and somewhere between 1 and 3 bass drummers. But through a series of some catastrophic events between broken arms and wives with cancer and other things, here we are with 4 snare drummers. The Riverside Brigade was started just after the summer of 2014. The Blue Stars had a 50th anniversary tour that Tom here was a part of with me, and we started our opener just the way the Blue Stars did in '72 with a rope drum solo. And Tom happened to strap on that drum in the parking lot and fell in love with it, borrowed a drum, then bought a drum, then shipped the other one to me and said, hey, we need to start a rope drum line, and it came together from there. Down at the end, we have Will Laddie, who marched with Spirit of Atlanta from '91 through '93. We have next Tom, the Hammer Leaf, and if you watch him play, you know why he's called the Hammer. And he was with Blue Stars from 1964 through '73, and then helped instruct a little afterwards. Peggy Sue here, Peggy Sue Snyder was in the Phantom Regiment, 1981 and 82, and she's part of the famous quartet you've probably seen on YouTube called Chicks with Sticks. And I'm Ken Donka, I was in the Blue Stars also. So we want to dedicate this performance to one of our bass drummers. Don Fitzgerald, commonly known as Fitz, was a soprano player in the Des Plaines Vanguard in the early 70s, went to the Blue Stars and played soprano in '75, and in '76 he was their drum major. And then over the years, he came over to the dark side and became a drummer, and a pretty darn good one. And a little over a year ago, he developed congestive heart failure to the point where he was hoping to get a transplant, and 2 weeks ago, he had a stroke. He's in hospice right now, and he doesn't have much longer. So we're going to dedicate this to Fitz, and we're going to start off by playing 5 of our warm-ups, simply because we do them a little differently than a lot of other people. Our first one is called 16th Note Flam Bucks, and we actually played this a little differently in the '78 Blue Stars, but we're going to start off by doing a nice, easy flowing pattern of 4 in a hand, then 3, then 2, and then we start to the inverted pattern. So this is called 16th Flam Bucks. Our next exercise is called 1, 2, 3, 4, because we play single strokes, double strokes, quadruple strokes, then we go to 3 strokes, and you'll understand why it's called 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's a great warm-up. the way, you'll probably notice we do everything on the right and on the left, just because that's the way we do things. The next one is called, is our triple roll exercise. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to play a good triple roll exercise, but we wanted to play it off the right and the left without having to stop and then start over again. So what we've done is we've taken the last 4 partials of the triple roll and we've done it at a paradiddle at the same speed. So 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 paradiddle top, and then we go over. And there's no accent. It should sound like an unbroken roll, but it will switch hands. So here we go. One time here, but this is a great exercise to play over and over and over at faster and faster speeds, and it'll really build your endurance. Most people probably know the paradiddle pyramid: 4 singles, 4 doubles, 4 triples, 4 doubles, 4 singles. We're going to do that, and then we're going to go right into the same thing, but with Burger Lesson 25, drag paradiddle number 1, drag paradiddle number 2, and we'll come back down. And then we'll do the same thing. We call it a pyramid of rats, which is single random cue, double random cue, triple random cue, double and single. We're going to do it the first time through using only 1 accent on the beginning of each rudiment. Then we'll go through and do it again, and we'll do all the accents on the doubles and the triples as well. So this is our pyramid exercise. And you probably noticed we had a more closed drag on our drag paradiddle pyramid and a more open drag on the Rudimental pyramid. We just want to be able to do that so we can play all the different interpretations. Now the next exercise is our last warm-up exercise before we do a couple of pieces for you. And I actually wrote this exercise when I was 14. It was my instructor gave me an assignment to write an exercise for my drumline, the Fox Valley Raiders out of Aurora, Illinois. And I just call it old school. We never had a name for it, but my buddy Rich, who marched next to me, and we made this up, and it's drags and ratomacues and paradiddles and flam drags and flam ratomacues and 32nd note drag paradiddles, and it's really cool. So here is old school. Cadence. Cadence. For you. In 1972 and 73, the Blue Stars had a great drum solo, and then in 1976 they resurrected it, and they shortened it a little, and they played it at about 142 beats a minute. We're not going to play it anywhere near that fast. We're going to play it about 108, I think. But for anybody who loves Swiss triplets, this is the solo. Something by Jack Pratt. This is an exercise he wrote for the Caballeros called The Exercise, and I was privileged enough to be able to show it to Jack last year, and he said, "That's nice, I love that." And I said, "Really?" He said, "I wouldn't play it that way, but yeah, it's nice." So this is our version of The Exercise, and we've spiced it up a little bit, but this is one of my favorite things to play. Haskell Har called the Glenwood Boy. We have shortened it significantly from the way Haskell wrote it. And then we added, Hammer actually wrote 2 new sections, the backsticking section and the final tag. So this is the Glenwood Boy. And that usually starts with a 2-bar bass intro, which we do a visual to. It's kind of hard to do without the basses. Anyway, we're going to do one last piece by ourselves, and then we're going to have Whoopi's Warriors come up, and we're going to play a piece by Blue Devils. This last one is our version of 3 camps. Now I want to tell you how this came about. Hammer and I were at Blue Stars camp a couple of years ago, and he said, hey, I got an idea for a piece for the Riverside Brigade. I'd like to do something with 3 camps and then just kind of build on it from there. I said, well, what'd you have in mind? He goes, well, I really like the Mitch Markovich kind of feel. So if you could write a section with that, or if you do that section with the fast paradiddles from Cavaliers, 1964 solo, and just kind of build on that. So I went home and I wrote a section that sounded to me like Mitch Markovich, and I called it the Donkovich section. But what was really weird was a year later we found out when my relatives came over from Romania and landed at Ellis Island, our name was Donkovich, and they shortened it to Donka, so that was kind of cool. And so then after the 64 Cavaliers paradiddle section, we're going to do the paradiddle pyramid and the pyramid of rats, and then we're going to end with a sextuplet single accented version of 3 camps to finish it out. So now we called it 3 camps with a C, but when David Kamsher passed away a couple of years ago, the director of the Blue Stars, we changed it and now we call it 3 camps with a K in honor of Dr. Kamsher. So here is 3 camps plus. the opportunity to come and play. Now we're going to have Wolfie's Warriors join us. And after last year, Steve and I were jamming in a room afterwards, and I said, hey, do you know this piece called Dick by Blue Devils? He said, yes, we do. It's an old Blue Devils street beat. And we played it, and I said, hey, Riverside Brigade's coming, you're coming, why don't we get together and play that? So we're going to play it at a nice, easy 112. It'll really groove. Blue Devils played this at about 126 beats a minute, all the way through a parade. So when you see what it takes to play this, you're going to think that they were absolutely on some kind of really great drugs to be able to do that. But this is a really hard piece, and it's a wonderful, wonderful piece. This is Dick. And by the way, we have Jill over here playing the bass drum solo. I got a call that our last bass drummer that was going to come with us, I was leaving my house 10 o'clock Thursday night to drive here, and she called me at 9:40 and said, I've pretty much got pneumonia, I can't come. So I texted Steve and said, hey, can Jill play that solo? And he said, she's our rock, she'll be there. Everybody's had a great weekend. Nobody's in the mood to sit here and learn a whole bunch of stuff. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of things that I think are really important. But the title of this clinic is Having Fun with Rudiments. So I want to show you some ways to have fun so that when you're practicing your rudiments, it's not boring and you don't give up on it and lose out on the ability to be better. So I'm going to start off with a piece I wrote for this weekend, and it's really, really hard, and I named it Oedipus, and if you know who Oedipus was, you'll probably be able to figure out why I named it. So that's got a lot of visuals in it. And the reason I put a lot of visuals in it is because a lot of kids these days seem to be really focused on visuals. They're always trying to put some kind of stick flip in, some kind of backstage something. And while visuals are really cool and they're a lot of fun and I love to watch them, we have to remember, just like vitamin supplements, the word is supplement. It's not meant to replace your diet, okay? The visuals are there to add to the performance. But as my friend who runs the Atlanta Drum Academy says, if you can't play the licks, you don't need the tricks. So now let's talk about what we need to do to be able to play things the way we want to be able to play them. So one of the first things that I want to cover is people say, well, what do I have to do to get better chops? And I started asking people, well, what are chops? How do you define chops? And you know, I had never defined that for myself. So recently I put out a book, and it's just my favorite exercises and warm-ups and things. And they're actually selling them, and if you buy one this weekend, $5 of it goes to the USARD. So I'm not trying to do a commercial, but if you want this information, it's in there. So the first thing I did is I started writing down what all's involved in having chops. And I came up with at least 9 things that you have to have in order to say you have chops. The first is stick control, obviously. The second is accuracy. Being able to play things the way they should be played and the way you want to play them. The next is speed. Of course, you have to be able to play fast if you want to have monster chops. Then the next thing is endurance. It doesn't do any good to be able to play anything you want if you can only play it for 30 seconds, right? Then we have vocabulary. And by vocabulary, I mean our rudiments, which we're going to talk about. And then we have diversity. And diversity is not the same as vocabulary. It's being able to play everything in our vocabulary lots of different ways. We also have adaptability. When you're out there playing as a percussionist, you have to be able to adapt to whatever the orchestra or the band or the drum corps or the rest of the drum line is doing. And you have to have creativity to have monster chops. And the last thing is musicality. And the one thing, I'm so glad that Jeff brought the Bugles today with West Point, because, and there was the other group that had to fight. You know, musicality is important, and sometimes when we're playing these pieces, we forget that it's actually music. It's not just drum beats. We're not just pounding away, okay? I mean, let's make sure we're musical. Let's not perpetuate the idea that the way you can tell if the riser is level is that the drool's coming out of both sides of our mouth evenly. You know, let's let people know that we are musicians as well. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. Okay. So the first thing we need to know to have monster chops is there are lots of different strokes, 4 basic strokes, but I'm only going to talk about 2. I'm going to talk about a downstroke, which I call a marcato stroke. And the word marcato in music does mean that things are slightly louder, but the definition I like is that all the notes are separate, okay? And then you've got a rebound stroke or a legato stroke where everything flows together. Now, there's a thing that I noticed when I was learning how to play on a modern snare drum. I noticed that as I'm playing legato strokes, if I look at the beads of my sticks, when I'm playing 16th notes, I can only see the beads together at the top of the arc of all of my strokes. But when I'm playing into the head, when I'm playing downstrokes, I can see the beads at the top and I can see them at the bottom. So I've come up with a little exercise called marcato legato, and you just go back and forth between legato strokes and marcato. And if you watch the beads of my sticks, you'll see where I'm switching. Now notice I didn't do this. I'm still playing musically. I'm just using a downstroke. So that's the first thing, be able to play marcato and legato. The next thing is, if any of you are singers, or if you know singers, singers can sing to a certain range in their full voice, and then they flip over into what's called falsetto voice. The best singers have a transition zone or a T-zone where you can't really notice that they're switching. It's very smooth. We have something very, very similar in drumming, where you go from playing every note with your wrists and your fingers on the stick to where you start to loosen up and then suddenly you're all bouncing. And that transition zone has to be very, very smooth if you want to be a really great elite drummer. So when you're doing single strokes, you'll probably start with more marcato strokes, then you'll go to legato, and then you'll start using more wrist, and then suddenly the sticks will be on your finger control. And you want to have a really smooth transition going up and going down. Full bounce and then back down again. You do that with a double stroke roll. Anybody who's played a double stroke roll, open to close to open, that's exactly what you do. From marcato strokes, all wrist, to legato strokes, to finger control, a little more finger control, then all of a sudden the wrists lock, and at the fastest speed, you're not using your wrists at all, it's all fingers and arms. And then you go back and you tighten up the fingers again, use a little more wrist, and then pretty soon you're all wrist. So you see, this transition zone has to be seamless. Same with three-stroke rolls. Now here's the thing about three-stroke rolls. A lot of guys, when we first learned these, were like, whoa, that's really hard, that's really advanced stuff. But I know guys who can only play three-stroke rolls like this. You've got to be able to play them like this. And everywhere in between. T-zone, that transition zone, with everything that you play. Not just single, double, and triple strokes, but with every rudiment, really work on that. Work on them open to close to open. I know that a lot of people don't ever do that anymore because it's just not required if you're going to do a solo. But I can guarantee you the best drummers in this room regularly break down rudiments, open, close, open. And you should do it too. Now, one other thing, oh, by the way, play with all different heights and all different volumes because you use different muscles for those things. And then the next thing is I want to talk about flams. I see a lot of problems with flams with people this weekend. And I think the problem comes from a lack of understanding that you play flam rudiments slowly, different than you play them when you're playing them at a higher speed. When you're playing them slowly, we have an accent height, a grace note height. Accent's what, maybe 12 inches? Grace note height's supposed to be about an inch, right? And you don't lift, right? You just drop them. We've all seen that Dennis DeLucia video screaming at us, keep your grace notes down, right? But when so you've got accents and grace notes, then you've got a tap height somewhere in the middle. But as we speed up, the grace notes tend to come up a little bit to maybe 2.5 to 3 inches, and the taps come down to the same height. So we've really only got 2 heights when we're playing flam accents at a fast speed. Now, what do we do about the flams that are not accents? If we're playing the taps and the grace notes at the same height, aren't we going to get a flat flam? The answer is yes. So let me give you kind of an esoteric answer to this. When you're playing something like, let's say like choo-choos, what we used to call paraflips. If you intend for the non-accented flam, if you intend for the main stroke of the flam to be higher and for the grace note to be lower, it will be. It's not something you have to analyze and get all, oh, it should be that much different. If you intend for it to be that way and you make it feel that way, it will be that way. So that's kind of, like I said, an esoteric answer, but it will fix the problems that so many people have with grace notes way up here. Okay? So the next thing is I want to talk about the rudiments. You have to know all 40 rudiments and compound or hybrid rudiments. Learn as many different things as you can. Our vocabulary is the rudiments. Everybody else learns scales. We have to know the rudiments. But here's what you don't usually do. Learn how to play them off the right, learn how to play them off the left, and learn how to play them alternating. Now, some rudiments alternate naturally, like paradiddles, right? So what I do is I have what I call a not-so-simple rule. Not so simple is play it off the right, alternate it, play it off the left, alternate it. Or if it's a rudiment that starts alternating, start with the alternating. But here's what we're going to do. 4 paradiddles, starting on the right, and they alternate. We're going to do 4 of those. Then we're going to do 4 all off the right hand. Then we're going to repeat that all off the left. 4 alternating, starting with the left, and then 4 all off the left. Play paradiddles all off the same hand. Here's the right hand of inverted flam taps. By the way, who here's ever had problem playing inverted flam taps? It's a tough rudiment, right? Here's the right hand of inverted flam taps. Here's the right hand of right-handed paradiddles. Aha! You see, when you're trying to learn inverted flam taps, your brain's going, oh my God, these are hard. I've got a tap and I've got an accent. How do I do that? But when you are just playing paradiddles off the same hand, your brain goes, well, this is simple, it's just paradiddles. You get the mind thing out of the way, and at the same time, you teach your hand and the muscle memory of how to play inverted flam taps. You want to play inverted cheeses? Put a diddle on the beginning of the paradiddle. And then you can play this. Right? So these are some little tricks we do. And you should do this, a not-so-simple exercise. Do it with everything. How about flam accents? Or Swiss triplets. Now, why would you play alternating Swiss triplets? Who knows the answer from last year? Why would you do that? Why not? That's exactly right. Okay. So, one of the rudiments I really like, can we have Jeff Jr. and Dominic come on up? One of the rudiments I like to do this with is pataflaflas. And last year I was playing with Jason, Dominic's nephew, and I asked him if they had any cool exercises. He goes, well, we just pretty much do rudiments. We do like 4 flam paradiddles, 4 counts of flam taps, 4 counts of pataflaflas, and 4 counts of inverted flam taps. And I thought that was great. And then I said, well, can we play it off the left hand? And he had never tried left-handed pataflaflas. So I went home and wrote what I call the DC, for Dominic Cuccia, flam grid. And we're going to have Jeff and Dominic come up and play this. We'll play it on roll cross. I just asked Jeff to play that around lunchtime, by the way, so that was pretty good. But see, that's one where you're playing them on the right, you're playing everything off the left, you're going back and forth, and I promise you, that's one of the best old-fashioned exercises you can do. Okay, now, the next thing to do is working on moving accents. And one of the exercises that I came up with, well, I didn't come up with it by myself, but I call it shift happens, because you're shifting the accent on paradiddles. So you play 4 with the accent where we usually do, then 4 on the E, 4 on the N, 4 on the up. And you can't believe how many people can't play this. I'm in the booth at WGI and DCI and PASIC, and I have these kids come up and they're like, oh, let's do the book report grid. I go, let's play paradiddles moving the accents. And they're like, what? That's too simple. I go, well, let's try it anyway. And they can't do it. They can play all this advanced stuff, but they can't do that. And so when we slow it down and ask them to play the hard stuff slow, they don't have the chops to play it. That's how you know they're not playing it accurately fast. So one of the things to do is move these accents. So here is shift happens. Moving the accents around. And again, do that on all rudiments. How about flam accents? It's a lot harder than you think if you've never tried that. All right, the next thing to do is move flams. Let's take the same kind of exercise that we just did, and let's just put flams on the different beats. Let's leave the accent on one with the paradiddle, and we'll just move the flam. Called 4-3 WTF. And WTF does not stand for what you think it is. It means walk the flam. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do that same idea, moving the flam. We'll go back and forth between flam paradiddles and flam accents. Now, the next thing to do is move both the flams and the accents. So I just did the flam accent, moving the accent. So now what I'm going to do is called the double grid flam accent. The first time through we play 4 flam accents with the accent on the first partial, then the second partial, then the third partial. Then we're going to repeat that whole thing, but this time we keep the accent pattern the same, 4 on 1, 4 on 2, 4 on 3, but we're going to move the flam to the second partial for all of it. And then we'll go back a third time and we'll do the same thing but move the flam to the third partial. And then I'm going to have my friend Will come up here and we're going to play a couple of things that demonstrate that. So here's the double grid flam accent. Thing to do to build chops. Then you can add drags, you can add cheeses, you can add flam fires, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to have Will come up, and Will's got a pretty drum too. That's from Santa Clara '95. They didn't 94? Okay. They didn't like the rap, so they sent it back, and they never played him. But he got the drum at a really good price, and he can say it was a Santa Clara drum. So. Anyway, we're going to play an exercise called slow paradiddle. And the reason it's called slow paradiddle is it's just flam accents in the first part, but the flam accents are done in the form of a paradiddle. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. And then there's another measure with some other things. But what we're going to do is we're going to play it that way, then with flam drags. Then we're going to repeat that, putting the accent on the second partial. Then we're going to repeat it playing it on the third partial. So this is slow paradiddle. exercise. It was never written down. It's just something that they all learn to play. But when Will got a hold of this, he realized how boring it was because everything was off the right hand. So he rewrote it so that on the repeating measures, everything shifted over to the left. And then it used to end with just a long roll, so he had all these fast parallels. And then we've been playing that for a couple of years, and then last October, after the Blue Stars Oktoberfest thing, he said, hey, why don't we rewrite that a little bit some more? So together we just kind of spiced it up. And this is our version of Grace. It's got a lot of that same stuff where you're doing unexpected stickings. So I've just got two more things I want to do, and then I'm going to finish out by playing three pieces with some friends. And the next thing I want to do is give you an assignment to work on. Remember I talked about just moving the accents. There's one rudiment that I've never heard anybody try to move the accent and play a grid on, and that's the patafla. So I tried it myself, and you can't believe how hard that is. So basically all you're going to do is play 4 counts of patafla 4 times and move the accent. 1, E, and But you keep the sticking for the patafla exactly the same. You keep the flams in the same place. So I'll play it through one time. You know, when you play things on a pad for weeks at a time and you forget to practice on your drum before you come, it's a problem. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is talk about another way to alter the rudiments to make them fun, and that is to change the sticking, to change the actual sticking of the rudiment, but keep the basic idea of the rudiment. So let's stick with the patafla. First of all, make sure you do that DC flam grid, so you're playing them off the right, the left, and alternating. But then, let's change the sticking. The first one that I have is called a paradiddle fla-fla. You still keep the flams and the accents as you would on a patafla, but now what you're going to do is do them in the form of a paradiddle. So, that's the first one. The second one, we're going to take that diddle and put it at the beginning so it's like a windmill. So these are called, flam mill. So we call them windmills when I grew up, I don't know why. But it's a flam mill fla-fla. So you have the sticking of a flam mill, but you leave the flams and the accents like a patafla. And then the last one, I just was messing around one day with Gary Gomez, and I put the diddle in the middle there. He said, what do you call that? I said, I don't know, it's some kind of patafla. He goes, it's a Kevy fla-fla. I said, no, we're not keeping that name. So I call it a middle diddle fla-fla. But just practice that. Take those 4 notes, put the diddle at the end of the 4, then in the middle, then in the beginning, and you'll have all these different variations of patafla. And then once you get that, then go through and start moving the accents. And these are all the things that you can do to really, really boost your chops and to be able to practice your rudiments without getting bored with them. Okay, so I'm going to have Joe Fontana come up because Joe was really bored this weekend, not having anything to do and no one to play with. Okay, in 2006, my one and only big sister passed away from ovarian cancer. And on the anniversary of her death, I decided to write her a drum piece. Oh, sure. Sure. Okay, so anyway, on the 10-year anniversary of her death, I decided to write her a piece, and it's called Dawn, named after my sister. And the beginning part is actually the same as that Donka section that I played with the Riverside Brigade. But this is Dawn. Okay, Mark Beecher isn't here this weekend. He's the head of the National Association of Rudimental Drummers. And about 2 years ago, Mark asked me to write a solo because for the first time in a couple of decades, they're putting out a new book of solos this summer. And I wanted to play for you my solo that's in that book. And it's called Sisyphus. Now, Sisyphus in Greek mythology was someone who made the gods angry. And to punish him, they made him spend the rest of eternity pushing this giant rock up to the top of a mountain, and then it would roll down the other side, and he had to push it up again. And that's what he had to do. And the reason I named it Sisyphus is because the first 4 bars are a specific pattern. The next 4 bars are that same pattern complicated, like we're going up the hill. The third 4 bars are the hardest version of that, and then we go down and we start a whole new pattern. And then we go up and a new pattern, and we go up, and then it's done. So the book will be out this summer, hopefully, and this is called Sisyphus. Prospery come up, and I'll tell you the story about this solo we're going to do. I wrote a bunch of stuff when I was a kid in drum corps, and I really liked a lot of it. But about 20 years ago, my mom had a flood in her basement, and I lost everything. I have no record of anything I wrote as a kid. Then about 2 years ago, a former student of mine who lives in Germany found me on Facebook. He says, "Oh, I have a notebook of everything you ever wrote, and I play through it all the time." And I'm like, "Send that to me." So I found my 8th grade competition solo, which was the very first thing I ever wrote. And being from Chicago, around the Cavaliers, I'm kind of a Mitch Markovich guy. In fact, my lineage goes Frank Arsenal, Mitch Markovich, Mike Lorenz, Paul Milano, me. So I'm a Mitch Markovich guy, or at least I was. I don't play that way anymore. But he had just put out a solo called The Winner. So I thought, well, I'm going to be a winner, but I can't call it that, so I called mine The Champ. And it's a pretty good solo, but I was playing through it and I go, well, I really like the feel of this solo, but I wonder if I could spice it up. So I was adding things, and I kept thinking of the movie Oliver Twist, where he's a sir, I'd like more please, and I'd like more please, more flams, more stuff here. So I called this More Please. And I'm proud to present it with Jeff Prospery on snare, and we're going to have Dominic on bass drum, and this will be the first time I've ever heard it played with the full ensemble on drums, so it's going to be cool. We have room back here for it? Oh, yeah. I tell everybody about it, and I wish you would too. And I just have to say, out of all the drumming weekends that I've ever been to, this is without a doubt the most fun that I ever have. And just remember, you know, I watch these Air Force guys play and the other people that are getting up there in age. And I just want to remind everybody, you don't get old because, you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. So good night, everybody.